After the initial info from unofficial sources, we now have the preliminary report available released on the 6th of March about the Scandinavian Airlines incident at Brussels Airport, Belgium from the 5th of February 2026, when an Airbus with its 158 occupants on board commenced its takeoff from a taxiway instead of a runway. Because of the circumstances, the event was classified as a serious incident due to the high probability of an accident. This is what happened. An Airbus A320neo started its taxi after being pushed back at around 20:58 UTC from stand 147 with an initial taxi clearance via Romeo 4, inner 8, inner 9, inner 10, and was, according to the ATC voice recorder script, initially cleared via Zulu to holding point runway 07 right. In other words, the initial taxi clearance for Sierra Alpha Sierra 43 Mike planned a takeoff from the beginning of runway 07 right with around 9,500 feet of runway available. However, when the Airbus was at taxiway Romeo 4, ATC proposed the crew the option of an intersection takeoff from Charlie 6, which are still nearly 7,900 feet of runway available. Intersection takeoffs, according to the airport's additional runway information notes, are only available when visibilities are at or above 2,000 meters, which was the case at that night. The crew, which was since 7 hours on duty already, accepted and received a revised taxi clearance to Charlie 6 via Outer 9 and Outer 10. At the time of the taxiway and runway surfaces were wet with reported runway condition code of 5, 5 and 5 for each sector. Runway condition code 5 means good braking action on a wet or damp runway. The wind was from 110 degrees with 5 knots, the visibility 10 kilometers or more with few clouds at 3,200 and a broken layer at 4,800 feet above ground level. The temperature was reported to be 7 degrees Celsius, so the weather was no factor. When the aircraft entered taxiway Outer 9, the flight crew received the instructions to line up runway 07 right via Charlie 6 and wait. At the time, the red stop bar at holding point Charlie 6 was already extinguished. Approximately 45 seconds later, the Airbus entered taxiway Outer 10, which the crew unfortunately defined to be Charlie 6. The captain stated, "We are at Charlie 6 and we are clear to enter." Instead of turning left into runway 07 right, the Airbus turned left too early into taxiway Echo 1. The aircraft was at the time in a hotspot zone. Hotspot zones are specially marked zones depicted on airport charts to indicate to pilots a complex layout with a history or a potential risk requiring special attention to avoid collisions or runway incursions. The area where the Airbus turned left too early is such a hotspot area where many taxiways and or runways join. From the cockpit, and especially during the night, this can look cluttered and confusing. A priceless support in such a situation is a moving map system which displays the aircraft's exact position in real time. The Airbus involved was not equipped with such a system. Now the crew ran the lineup checklist and received at 21:03 and 16 seconds the takeoff clearance. A camera system located at the south portion of Terminal 3 captured 43 Mike while turning left too early, followed by a takeoff attempt on the taxiway. It is clearly visible on the recordings how the Charlie 5 stop bar lights were lit and that the landing lights were being switched on, getting ready for takeoff. Based on Brussels Airport lighting system investigations, only the stop bar lights from active runways for takeoff and or landings are lit. Therefore, the stop bar at Echo 1 was never lit and did not indicate the crew that they are or were about to enter by mistake runway 01-19. Individual stop bar lights cannot be activated separately. On top, one of the Echo 1 holding point lights to the right of taxiway Echo 1 was not working at the time of the incident. However, a red lit sign on each side of holding point Echo 1 is indicating that runway 01-19 is ahead. With a ground speed of 3 knots, the crew aligned the aircraft with the taxiway on a heading of 070 degrees, so identical to runway 07 right next to it. At 21:03 and 51 seconds, the thrust levers were advanced to the flex detent, a reduced takeoff thrust setting. The commander was the pilot flying looking outside, the co-pilot acted as the pilot monitoring, checking the instruments and other parameters. 11 seconds later, the jet passed 100 knots indicated airspeed, while the co-pilot did the 100 knots call, indicating the transition from the low into the high-speed regime, which should be cross-checked and, according to SOPs, confirmed by the pilot flying. At the time, the commander recognized the forward view to appear increasingly narrow and therefore did probably not read back the 100 knots call. The co-pilot then looked outside and instantly realized that the aircraft was not at the runway, calling "Stop, stop, stop." The takeoff was aborted at an indicated airspeed of 127 knots. The taxiway narrows from 29 down to 18 meters at Victor 1. Runway 07 right has a width of 45 meters, just to give you an idea about the figures in general. ATC observed the abortion of the takeoff but chose not to intervene at the point, as it seemed to be not the right moment. The Airbus was approaching a temporary fence guarding off tarmac 5 due to planned construction work and was able to stop in time. The crew parked the jet on a piece of tarmac in front of holding point Charlie 1 facing southeast.
Scandinavian 4-3 Mike? We are okay, but something went very wrong. Standby.
Meanwhile, the Airport Rescue and Firefighting Service ARFF was alerted and on its way. At a distance of 65 meters off the center line of the taxiway is the airport's fuel station, and about 300 meters following the taxiway center line, a public and a service road crossed the path. The passenger disembarked. None of the 152 passengers on board were reported injured. This was at the end a close call, classifying the event as a serious incident. The incident aircraft was an Airbus A320neo manufactured in 2018 with 17,595 hours on the airframe. The Neo was equipped with a takeoff surveillance system known as TOS-1 as a standard setup, but not the TOS-2 version, which verifies a takeoff on the intended runway based on the data input by the crew. On top, the aircraft was neither equipped with the optional Airbus Runway Overrun Prevention System ROPS, nor with the Runway Awareness and Advisory System RAS, a system which verbally tells the crew what runway they are about to enter or presently on and how much runway is left available. RAS even tells you when attempting a takeoff on a taxiway once passing through a speed of 40 knots. Especially the TOS-2 and the RAS are aircraft avionics systems that could have prevented this incident. Scandinavian Airlines meanwhile already took countermeasures, acquiring Airport Moving Map AMM capabilities to display real-time aircraft position to enhance pilot situational awareness, especially on complex taxiground movements during the night. At the time of the incident, 3 air traffic controllers were on shift. However, ground and air frequencies were handled by 1 air traffic controller during the time of the incident, since 1 ADC controller took an official break. The delivery frequency was covered by a supervisor. Brussels Airport is further equipped with an Airport Movement System AMS, an in-house software application capable to display all aircraft and vehicle movements and to spot possible conflicts on the runways as well as in their vicinity based on ground radar. The safety net generates an alarm when, for instance, a departure is attempted from a wrong runway, an aircraft is crossing an active stop bar, or arrival and/or departures with runway not clear. If a takeoff attempt from a taxiway is covered by any means is at least not mentioned up to now, but the left turn into Echo 1 should have been at least visible on the ground movement radar. The investigation is ongoing with special focus on workload, both ATC and crew, ATC procedures in general, operator procedures, the aerodrome layout including available lighting and signage, and the effectiveness of the airport's movement and alerting system. This process may take up to 12 months in time. Thanks for watching and thanks for your support.